Howdy and hello everyone, and welcome to the first video in my 5008 trackside series. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at Altamont Corridor Express, looking through its daily operations, the ride experience, answering the question if it is California's worst commuter rail, and how it plans to improve in the future. So, let's start off by heading trackside. ACE's first train of the day, ACE 01, leaves its eastern terminus of Stockton bright and early at 4:10 a.m. This train operates almost exclusively without light, with it arriving into the western terminus of San Jose just after 6:20 a.m. Here we see ACE 01 headed through a darkly lit Alviso Marsh near the end of its journey at 5:59 a.m. One thing you may have noticed is that compared to other commuter rails, ACE consists are very long, usually around 7 cars long. In comparison, the other two Californian commuter rails that fully use locomotives and coaches for their consists, Coaster and Metrolink, both average 4 to 5, and for Coaster on certain occasions, 3-car consists. After ACE 01 comes 03, another westbound train that now finally gets to see the light of day, headed through the Alviso Marsh at 7:26 a.m. Hauling ACE 03 was locomotive 3114, a Siemens Charger locomotive that was only a few months old as of the writing of this video. 3114 will be joined hopefully in 2026 by 3115, increasing the number of Charger locomotives running on ACE from 5 to 6. For this next shot, I relocated to the beautiful location right at the start of Niles Canyon. Here we see yet another westbound train, ACE 05, being hauled by yet another Siemens Charger locomotive, numbered 3111. You may have noticed that a few of the cars on this consist were in a different paint scheme, sporting a mix of blue and magenta with a white lining and white roof. This was ACE's original paint scheme coming from the late 1990s. Starting in 2021 with their new Siemens Charger locomotives, ACE began repainting their fleet into this new scheme, and currently only a handful of coaches and rolling stock remain with this paint scheme. This scheme is the third scheme ACE had, the second being this scheme, which was only put on 2 coaches out of the fleet. This scheme has unfortunately fully been replaced. Last of the morning trains is ACE 07, a train with a different, much older pair of locomotives hauling it, F40PH-3C locomotives, numbered 3103 and 3102. The F40PHs are the only locomotives on ACE to sport the original paint scheme, as they were the original locomotives to be on the service in 1998. On these locomotives and the coaches I mentioned previously, you will notice the C in ACE didn't always stand for corridor. Before 2012, the C in ACE stood for commuter, which is a perfect segue into the reason for why all of the trains seen so far have been headed westbound and have all been in the morning. ACE runs strictly on a peak hour, workday only schedule. There are 4 round trips in total, with 4 trains going west in the morning and the same 4 headed back east in the afternoon. We will dive more into ACE's scheduling and general info about its service later in this video. Next, we jump to Livermore Station in the afternoon, where we see ACE 02 making its departure. Train 02 was recently added to the schedule in November 2024, replacing Train 10, giving commuters an earlier train to get home on. ACE 02 was led by a brand new Crash Energy Management or CEM cab car, number 3310. These cars entered service in October 2024. ACE owns a combined total of 12 CEM cab and basic coach cars, with there being 6 of each variant. Our next clip brings us to the Altamont Pass for ACE 04. This train is led by cab car 3302, an original cab car from the service start in 1998 sporting the new paint scheme. (3302) sports a beautiful sounding 90s K5LA horn, a horn that ACE is known for. ACE is very well liked by rail fans for the horns on its OG equipment, which have been very well taken care of. ACE is the only commuter rail in California to have full sounding 90s K5LAs. The last to have them was Coaster until they reduced the power of their horns due to noise complaints in the early 2010s. Now we make our way to Pleasanton, where we see ACE 06. ACE 06 was led by cab car 3306, yet another standard cab car. This one being a part of a second order equipment acquired in the early 2000s to address ACE's limited capacity at the time. Finally, we head back to the entrance of Niles Canyon for ACE 08, led by CEM cab car 3314, with the engineer giving a few friendly taps on the horn. And with that, a day on Ace is over, with Ace 08 arriving back into Stockton at 7:47 p.m. In terms of rail fanning, Ace is extremely polarizing. When you're actually able to see it, Ace is a very fun and nice service to railfan. It passes through some extremely scenic views, has mostly great horns, and is one of 2 commuter rails in California to still operate classic F40PH locomotives. However, the key point there is when you can see it. Due to Ace's limited time, it can be a big hassle to find time to see Ace, as it does not run on weekends. In order to get more than 8 clips of it, you have to see it for multiple days, and half of the morning trains fully operate before most people are even awake. For anyone not from the Bay Area railfanning Ace, it isn't the easiest, but it is very rewarding if you can see it. Now let's move from railfanning onto the ride experience. On this day, I took Ace one way from San Jose to Livermore Station. The train was Ace 02 on a Friday. On this trip, I rode in one of the brand new CEM cab cars, however I will show what the older coaches looked like. The train is overall very clean and smells nice. However, sitting down in the new CEM cars, one thing is apparent. The seats on the CEMs are very firm. They have some give, but are insanely stiff, far stiffer than the Venture seats I hear tons of people ripping on. On the Coaster CEMs, their seats are also really stiff. Now thankfully, I never had a problem with stiff seats, however I can definitely see why someone would have an issue with these. Past these seats, these CEM cars are very nice. They have outlets which do have USB ports, and for my Apple computer charger, a USB cord could fit alongside it. After we departed San Jose, we made stops at Santa Clara and Great America. Santa Clara is rather close to Santa Clara's downtown and is a transfer point to a commuter rail I will certainly do a video on in the future, being Caltrain. And Great America is only a 5 to 10 minute walk from Levi Stadium and California's Great America. After Great America, we went through one of the most scenic and well-known parts of Ace's route, the Alviso Salt Marshes. This area is not only a fantastic spot to railfan, but is also beautiful while on board, as it has a perfect view of the marsh from both sides of the train. Our next stop is Fremont. Fremont Station is a transfer point for Capital Corridor trains to points northeast, including Oakland, Martinez, and the service's eastern terminus of Sacramento and Auburn. Fremont is also unfortunately one of the more crummy Ace stations, with my 2024 visit featuring many homeless tents. But thankfully, it appears those have since been cleared. After Fremont, we make our way through Niles Canyon. Niles Canyon is beautiful, especially at the time of year I visited, being mid-fall. In Niles Canyon, we pass the Niles Canyon Railway, a small railway museum with a collection of old equipment from the 20th century. Soon we make our stop at Pleasanton, a beautiful station in an absolutely beautiful and quaint town. I really do wish I got to spend more time in Pleasanton, as it's a great place to hang out and to railfan. Well, for now. I took this time to walk through the train. With the new CEM coaches, their doors are automatic, or at least are supposed to be. On Coaster, the same issue happens, but whenever I tap my finger, the doors seem to never want to open, and just in general, these things can be very finicky. I found the most reliable way to get these things to work is to tap your thumb very lightly, which works pretty reliably for the Coaster ones, but for some reason, this didn't work most of the time for Ace. In the end, if you can't get it to work, you can always pull this handle a bit and it will open for you. Now, the old coach doors are more reliable, but you have to have a strong arm to open them. I don't hear many people talking about this, but the old doors on Bombardier coaches are surprisingly difficult to open. A lot of the time, I have to put my full back into opening them, which isn't exactly convenient. Sometimes a cab car will be sandwiched and you'll have to open the front door with the handle, but these are a lot easier to open than the normal ones. After you have some kind of experience with the doors, you'll come to the next car. The older Ace coaches are like any other Bombardier car. Ace seems to have committed to using fabric seats, which has been recently on the way out because they're much harder to clean in comparison to vinyl seats. Because of this, unlike railroads such as Coaster or Metrolink, you'll barely notice a difference when going between a repainted car and an unrepainted car. On these older coaches, you'll also notice some nice screens telling you info about the train and next stops. Screens are always a nice touch, and while they aren't necessary, it does make knowing about where you're going and what's going on much easier. These aren't on the CEMs, but I'd imagine that's because they're still a bit new. Ace also has bike cars with tons of capacity, which is nice. There were 2 bike cars on this train, but it's kinda obvious most people taking Ace don't ride their bikes before or after their ride. And with all that being said, all of the coaches I went through were clean, smelled nice, and everyone riding didn't look like they came out of a ditch, which is great. ID boarded my train at our next stop of Livermore, concluding my ride on Ace. In terms of rider comfort, Ace is actually one of the best commuter rails, as while you're on the train, it really is a nice ride, but that's really the key point when you're on the train. Now finally, time to address the title of this video. Is Ace California's worst commuter rail? When you're in the position of a commuter who's trying to get from the Central Valley to the Bay Area, not at all. Ace is a fantastic commuter rail, but that's the issue with it. It is and has been exclusively focused on serving commuters and none more, which just isn't the style rail needs to be trending towards anymore. The most Ace will do outside of running their normal trains is run a special event train to Great America Station for the 49ers games, which are definitely successful, but staying on commuter schedules has restricted Ace from becoming something far greater than it is. Ace did establish 2 round trips for Saturdays in 2019 as a test, however this unfortunately got suspended in 2020 for the pandemic, and to my knowledge, there are no talks of bringing back Saturday service. A lot of the reason why Ace is restricted is because the railroad the trackage runs on, Union Pacific, doesn't allow Ace to run more than it does. This is because of general reasons of freight railroads being hard to work with, but that is a lot of what can be attributed to why Ace is so restricted in its scheduling, because unfortunately the SJJPA, the people who own Ace, don't own the trackage. Here's how I see things. Your service can be top tier quality, beautiful views, and have all the nice things you need for a great rider experience. But if your schedules are restricted to only letting people use it during a specific time of day and week for one reason, it loses a lot of its value. It's because of this that I see Ace as a bottom tier California commuter rail. I'd put it alongside Coaster, which is like Ace but with significantly more service, but with a pretty average rider experience. Knowing all of this, is Ace California's worst commuter rail? Yes, but it's not because Ace isn't good. Ace is one of my favorite services when I'm trackside filming it and when I'm on board riding it, but the when is the problem. If Ace could run more frequently, then it would easily climb the ranks in terms of California commuter rails. Thankfully, the SJJPA has realized this and are working towards strengthening Ace and what is now its sister service, the San Joaquin soon-to-be Gold Runner, to make the North Central Valley far more served and noticed in terms of rail. These plans include extending Ace down to Merced and up to Chico through Sacramento. This master plan is dubbed Valley Rail, and alongside these route extensions, it will also add on more Ace trains and hopefully bring back weekend service. The Valley Rail project is taking place over several segments, but it will most likely be semi-complete in around the same time California High-Speed Rail's initial operating segment is in service, which, thanks to a cap-and-trade extension, is fully funded and slated for a 2032 service start. In conclusion, Ace is a great commuter rail, but in comparison to all the other services across the state which are running bi-hourly, hourly, and in the case of a certain someone, 30-minute frequencies, Ace simply does not stack up. But hopefully in the future, Ace will reach its full potential and become the great Bay Area to Central Valley connection service it should be. So that wraps up this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. This is how I plan to go about releasing my rail fanning footage on this channel, and I have much more planned in this video. So, if you'd like to see all this footage raw, check out Whitestones, which has all of this and a bit more posted. With all that being said, I was 5008 Creations, you were the viewer, and I'll see you in the future. Goodbye.